So I've been reading up a little bit about colour theory, and I went down this really sort of like deep, dark spiral of how printers work for some reason. And I want to see if I can paint like a printer. Now, this pretty much goes against everything that I've been trying to do with my art for the last 6 months, but I'm gonna see if I can do it anyway. Now, if you're not familiar with how printers work, they work using 4 colours, or most of them anyway: cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. I have some paints here. I've got a magenta, I've got a cadmium yellow, I've got a cobalt teal, which is the closest colour that I could find to a cyan, and then ivory black. And I'm going to see if I can use these colours to create a realistic painting. Now, I'm pretty confident that if I were to put these out in a palette and mix my colours from these colours, I would be able to create a pretty realistic looking painting. Because we've got a red, we've got a yellow, and we've got a blue. The primary colours that we can mix together to create nearly any colour on the colour wheel. But that'd be too easy. The challenge for this video is to see if I can paint like a printer, and the way that printers work is by printing a layer of yellow, a layer of cyan, a layer of magenta, and then a layer of black. They don't mix the colours and then print that mixed colour. So there's actually 4 layers to your printed out pictures, and I want to see if I can recreate that in a painting. This is going to be a lot of painting. My main issue is I don't know which order to put the paints down. I know I'm going to end with black because it's the darkest. I don't know which order I'm going to do my magenta, my cyan, or my yellow. So to do that, I'm going to have to do a few colour swatches. There's just so many options, and I don't yet know which one is going to be best. So I've got a watercolour pad right here, and I've got to create some of the swatches to see the possible colour combinations. So this took a bit of mathing to work out, but we've got a yellow cyan, yellow cyan magenta, then we've got a yellow magenta, and then yellow magenta cyan. Then we've got to repeat that for the other 2 colours. So we've got all of our possible colour combinations there. Obviously there are significantly more when we introduce black to the equation, but we're going to ignore that for now. I started my swatches by laying in the 3 basic colours: yellow, cyan, and then magenta. And then I layered the different combinations of colours over the top to see what variations in that colour I could achieve by just layering those 3 colours. So, I mean, they're all a little bit of a muchness, really. I don't really think which order they go in matters, so we may as well go from light to dark. Starting with yellow, then cyan, and then our magenta. And then I'm hoping with the black over the top, we're going to get a little bit more variation in those values. I want to try and create a proper painting from this, but before I sink a load of time into doing something that I don't know is going to work, we're going to try and do something on a little bit of a smaller scale. And I think I'm going to paint something really simple, like an apple. So I've used a little bit of Photoshop magic to turn this picture of an apple into its separate colours. So our yellow colour, we've got our magenta, and then we've got our cyan, and then our black layer as well, which is very little black on this picture itself. So I'm going to use this to try and create my 4 colours that I need for this picture. After seeing all of those pictures all up next to each other, I've actually had a slight change of mind about my plan. And I'm actually going to start with the cyan because that has sort of like the fewest appearances in this picture. So I think it'd be easier to start with that first and then move on to yellow and then move on to magenta and then finally black. I treated the paint like watercolour, just applying very, very thin washes of the colour. In order to reach the right intensities of the colour to match the picture, I needed to cheat a little bit and I needed to do multiple layers of each individual colour, building up those washes of the single colours until I get the deep dark colour that I needed in some of the areas that match the reference photo. So the darker areas of magenta needed more layers of magenta than the areas that didn't have as much. I also cheated by adding a little bit of white just to add some details, finish it off and bring back some of the highlights. I'm actually so impressed with how that turned out. I was not expecting it to turn out as good as it did. Oh, there it is. So there is quite a wide variety of colours there. I chose an apple because there's reds and there's greens in there, so it wasn't like trying to overpower with one of the particular colours, like the yellow and the magenta would make a red, or the yellow and the cyan would make a green, so I wanted to include both. But how is this going to work with more intermediary colours, so things like browns? So that's what we need to work out next, and I actually think I'm ready to try a proper painting on a canvas. So let's see how this is going to turn out. I'm going to take a slightly different approach with this next painting. So I've got it here ready, sketched out on my canvas. It's actually a wooden board. And I'm going to start with black for this one. Just a light coating of black, but I think because of all the spots, I think it'll be easier doing that black layer first. And I have a feeling that just using those 4 colours in 4 layers might not be enough, but we'll see. As I said, I've started this painting a little bit differently, deciding to go with black first, painting in all of the spots with some thin washes, and there are a lot of spots. This took a lot of time. But once that layer of spots was down, I could then start to work over the top of that with a few more layers of black just to darken some areas and build up a little bit of form on that cheetah. Then once I was happy with the black, I moved on to yellow. Again, building up multiple layers of that yellow to really try and get an intense colour. Next up, magenta, and again I'm building it up in thin washes. Not everywhere is going to have the same intensity of that magenta colour, so some areas need a few more layers than others, so they appear a bit darker. Then finally onto the cyan, and as you can probably see, the colours aren't mixing as nicely as I thought they would, or well, at least hoped they would. I kind of knew it was going to go like this, but I still think it looks pretty cool. I really like the rainbow effect that's sort of going on here. I mean, this is looking pretty cool as it is, but it's not really looking realistic. There's no real realistic colours here. I mean, I love the colours that are there, but it still needs a little bit of work to try and get it a little bit closer to real life. And I'm going to see if doing a few more washes of the colours will help me bring that back to that more like typical cheetah colour. So I've just done the cyan, so I'm now going to go in reverse and add a little bit of magenta, and then some more cadmium yellow, and then finally some black, and then we'll see how we go from there. Yeah, so we didn't really get the browns that I wanted. I'm hoping maybe with a few more washes of the magenta followed by the yellow, we can get a little bit closer to that sort of yellowy colour of the cheetah, and maybe a few washes of black over the top, just to try and introduce a few more of those browns, but I really can't see it forming the way that I hoped it would. However, with a few more layers of black and the addition of some white, I can turn this into a finished painting that I think will look really cool. The final steps for this piece sort of move away from the reference photo. I know I'm not really focusing on the reference photo too much, but I decided that I wanted to stick with this sort of like bubblegum pop kind of theme and do a nice sort of bright, colourful wash on the background, followed by some splatters created with a toothbrush that just added a little bit more vibrancy and a little bit more movement to the painting. I'm actually really happy with how this turned out, and I think it's a pretty cool painting. Well, I was trying to see if I could paint like a printer. The answer is no, but I still think it's not a complete failure. I think this painting is actually quite a nice fun, colourful painting, and I actually learned quite a lot about acrylic painting in doing this. I don't think you're going to be able to produce realistic colours with this technique with just those three, but for a fun little test and a little experiment, I think it's been a success. I hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.